Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Nasser and I welcome you today to a very exciting concept. It's the introduction to the new year. This year, 2025, is going to be a new era for biology. And the reason why, see, biology needs to move on a little bit. All the sciences have moved on, but 2025, we are going to kick it off with the theory of biology. So let's talk about this theory of biology. What is it and why do we need it? Well, the theory of biology is all about trying to really put everything together and to have one theory of biology that attempts to explain life, the biology, the history of biology, the journey, and what the purpose is for all this magnificence that we see in our life, from the very simple organisms of bacteria, fungus, and protista, all the way up to the mighty animals like the elephants, the whales, and of course, the most sophisticated organism on Earth, the human species. Now, it's interesting that we mention the human species here because we as human species are the only ones that have the highest level of consciousness and intelligence, high enough to actually recognize and be aware of all this wonderful life that we lead. So let's start off with a very simple idea and really to try to get you to understand where we are. Look at us. We are amongst 8.7 million different species. How did we get here? And why do we have so much biodiversity anyway? Well, that's a question that has always lingered in my head, and I really wanted to find out more about this because there are lots of missing pieces in biology, lots of gaps, and sometimes it doesn't even make any sense. So I'm inspired just by that, and I want to change our approach to this investigation. It's going to be totally unbiased, and we're going to look at the purpose of life and how we got here totally from a biological perspective. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, as Einstein once said, it is insane to expect a different result if you're doing the same thing over and over. So I'm going to follow that advice. And I'm going to look at the biology totally unbiased with a totally unusual direction. Change the direction, change the approach. And that way, hopefully, we will discover new things. And that is exactly what I did. And 5 years ago, I embarked upon a journey of investigation. And today, I reveal to you the actual outcome. And it will turn everything you know about biology on its head. So, let's begin. What I found out as a result of my investigation is that life can be described in three to consist of three major components. Now, these three major components are the fundamental components of life itself. Without these components, there could be no life. So, what are these three important and fundamental components of life? Well, the first one is this mysterious force that only exists in biology. It doesn't exist in chemistry nor physics. It doesn't even exist in any other science. And that's the first component that I will discuss with you today. The second component, obviously, is the DNA itself. Now, the DNA is the most important organic molecule to life itself. And again, we'll discuss that in more detail. And of course, the third most important fundamental part of life is the organism itself. And I'm talking about the embodiment, the actual physical body of the organism. So when we put all these three components together, we have life in the form of an organism that's controlled by an inner program called the DNA, which is driven by this unusual phenomena that explains why random organic molecules can actually be transformed into living systems, something that the science cannot explain. In fact, the scientists say that life shouldn't have happened, but it did. And it is because of this phenomenon that, as I said, only exists in biology. So what's the name of this mysterious phenomenon? Well, it doesn't have a name, but I've given it a name, a term for reference. It's called organicity. Organicity. Now, the reason why I've given it that name is because it is the only force or field, we don't know what it is exactly, but it has to be the phenomenon that transforms random organic molecules into organic life, organicity. So remember that name because you're going to be hearing a lot of that. Now, as I said, the second most important component is DNA. But why DNA? Well, we know that the DNA is the most important molecule to life. Just simply put, it controls every aspect of the organism's life: its physiology, its embryonic development, its growth, its reproduction, its behavior, everything. So, having said that, so does the organism have any control over itself? And I'm not talking about the organism as a whole, I'm talking about the physical part of the organism. So, the DNA and the actual physical part of the organism are two separate entities. And we know this because there's one fact that separates the two, that makes them two distinct entities. And here's the fact: DNA appeared on the scene of life first. DNA appeared on the scene of life first. As a genetic material, the DNA needs a host. And here's the supporting proof. We know that viruses are just simply a piece of genetic material, like DNA, enclosed within a protein coat. But these viruses are completely and utterly useless and hopeless. And they're not a danger to us when they are floating about in the air or on surfaces. It's only when they enter a living host do they become virulent, do they become disease forming. Now, the DNA, when it first started, needed also a host. But in the early days of evolution, there was no host. So the DNA had to make its own, and hence the formation of the cell. So now we have two separate entities. We have the DNA and the host. And the host is the cell or the organism. And this is the first fact that we must remember, and this will help us understand that these are two separate entities. Furthermore, the importance of DNA, well, we know what that is to the organism, to the cell. And there's another fact. If we remove the DNA from the cell or from the organism, we know that eventually the organism will not survive. It will perish because everything about the organism is defined and controlled and programmed all by the DNA. You remove the control center and the physical body will just die. So that leaves me to now the third and the most important point. What is the relationship between the DNA and the organism and the physical part of the organism? Well, to me, it's quite clear. The DNA, you see, is the central program of life itself. And it required a host for it to survive. And the host is the organism. And that is the relationship between the DNA and the organism. The organism is being built according to the program for the program's survival needs. And that is the basis of the theory of biology. So let's have a look at some evidence or some clues that will support the theory of biology. Because obviously we need some backing. I can't make claims like this if I haven't really extracted some information that gave me the idea about the theory of biology. Well, let's have a look at some supporting evidence. Let's look at the first thing. Now, if you look at the life cycle is made up of, according to our textbooks, a birth, reproduction, and then death. But you see, the life cycle is not just about those three entities. There's a lot more. There's also before life, before the birth, and also even after death. And all these are controlled by the DNA. Fertilization, embryonic development. Even after death, we have the recycling of organic molecules back into the ecosystem. All this is controlled by the DNA. So why is the DNA doing all that? What's in it for the DNA? What does it benefit? Well, let's look at the DNA from the early stages of life, and we see that it is continuously innovating through the process of adaptation, through the process of biodiversity. And its main job is to survive. From the time that it began 4 billion years ago, when it appeared on the scene, think about it. If it did not survive, we would not be here. Life would not exist. So this is a very, very important point to remember. But how is it going to survive? Okay, it needs to survive basically by replication. It cannot survive as a single unit. Even if it started off as a double-stranded piece of DNA inside the complete cell. That's a good starting point. But that's not enough. It needs to replicate, and it needs to make the cell or the host divide so that the new copy can be put into the new cell. So from one copy and one cell, we have two copies and two cells. And that is a doubling effect. And if you keep doing that, we are going to expand the numbers. Survival is a numbers game, but it's also adaptive. Now, if you look at what's happening, we have a copy of DNA that's been packaged into the new host and then passed on to the next cell. Now, once the original organism has done its job, it will die, and the new generation actually lives on. So the cycle of the cycle of life, consisting of birth, reproduction, and death, is exactly the same as what the DNA did at the onset of its life as a form of reproduction. Now, the cell or the organism dies at the end of this process. What lives is a copy of the DNA. So you could say that the DNA is actually immortal, whilst the host undergoes the process of birth, it develops, it reproduces, and then it dies. Job done, as far as the physical entity of the organism is concerned. And this is what's been happening since the first replication step 4 billion years ago. And now look at what we have as a result, 8.7 million different species. And the amount of copies of DNA are in their trillions upon trillions upon trillions. The DNA has done a great job. It has secured its survival, and it has been using the doubling effect. It has been using the strategies of adaptation. It has been using the strategies of biodiversity. And not only that, it's gone beyond biodiversity. It's gone into the ecosystems. Now, these ecosystems are made of species that all work together in a cooperative manner, not in a competitive manner as we have been told. They all work together to form a strong community that's thriving. Each species is part of the ecosystem, and the ecosystem grows and thrives as a result of the individual contribution made by those species. And this is what it's been all about. Imagine a race, a relay race, and the baton is the DNA. Once the race starts, the baton is the runner runs with the baton, and their job is to pass on that baton to the next runner, and the next runner does exactly the same. And this is what's been happening. The baton is the DNA, the runner is each generation, and this has been going on for billions of years, and this is what's happened. So, the theory of biology, just to summarize, is all about the central character. And according to the theory of biology, it is not the organism. It is actually all about the survival of the DNA. That is basically the essence of biology in a nutshell. Literally, when you think about it, in a nutshell, because a nutshell is a thriving potential life that eventually will sprout to form a new tree. Now, just to finish off, and then I'm going to leave you with a final word. So, consider yourself as a human being, and you have the highest level of consciousness and intelligence. But are you really in control of your physiology? No. Are you in control of your pre-life, before you were born, your fertilization stages, even your developmental stages, your embryonic? No, you're not. And our lifespan is actually defined. We as human species, with our intellect and our consciousness, as I say, we are only able to control 5% of our bodily functions. Everything, when we're asleep, is kept alive. We are kept alive by a secondary mechanism. But why is it keeping us alive? What is the benefit to it? Well, I know that the secondary mechanism has been built by the DNA. We all know this. So the beneficiary of keeping you alive and keeping every organism on Earth, the beneficiary is the DNA. The DNA is using the organism as a host and as a vehicle for its own proliferation and for its own survival. From the time it was conceived, the DNA was on a mission for immortality. And to some extent, it has achieved it. All this biodiverse magnificence has been the result of the DNA's work. And it's using strategies, like I said, from DNA replication to cell division to adaptation to evolution to biodiversity to ecosystems. It has now colonized the entire globe. This Earth was once a barren, lifeless Earth. Now it is a thriving, it is a giant pulse of life. And that is all due to the DNA's work. And I think that's a remarkable achievement, because not only has it achieved all that, the DNA has made it possible to survive and get through the 5 mass extinction events. You see, biodiversity is a strategy to prevent extinction. And the example can be seen quite clearly with the dinosaurs. They were hit, Earth was hit by a meteorite, and the entire globe was covered with dust and cloud. And the first species that were destroyed were the dinosaurs. Now, if there were only dinosaurs and a few other species on Earth, maybe life wouldn't have, that would have been it for life. But because there were biodiverse organisms, they're the ones that carried the life further. In other words, it was the DNA's work in the first place to create biodiversity so that it can survive any calamity. Now, just to finish off, the DNA is virtually indestructible. Anything can happen now on Earth, any calamity, any disaster. All it takes is one cell, one complete cell, with its full set of DNA, with its full set of genes, to start life all over again, just like it did 4 billion years ago. Again, this is a remarkable achievement for the day. I think it deserves a round of applause, because the DNA is an amazing supermolecule, and we have underestimated its ability. It is the source of life. DNA is what the theory of biology is all about. Thank you, and I hope to see you soon. So join me in my other videos. I have plenty to discuss with you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now. Welcome to the theory of biology. Sorry. Welcome to my channel. Yeah. Get rid of that one. Cut!
We can always cut it, don't worry.
No,
You
cut.
just No. You can edit this out. Just
All right. Okay.
go into it when you're ready.
Welcome to my channel. My name is...
No, you forgot. Hello,
Oh, yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
My name is Dr. Nasser.
Sasa.
Introduce yourself.
Okay.
You don't just walk into a room and say, "Welcome to biology."
Yeah.
You say,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, we say... Hello and welcome to my channel.
wait. Do it again.
Why?
But
Why?
without me laughing.
Okay.
All right.